He's the host of the Michael Knowles Show with the Daily Wire and co-host The Verdict with Ted Cruz on a podcast. Michael Knowles, great to have you back, my friend. I want to talk a little bit about the media and the treatment of Trump. You know, this week we had a town hall, George Stephanopoulos. Some say it was a very hostile interview, a hostile town hall, hostile audience. What are your thoughts?
It's so strange that Bill Clinton's old hatchet man might be a little tough on President Trump. It was, and I think a lot of people thought that President Trump shouldn't walk into this town hall. Everything was stacked against him. You had Stephanopoulos, the Clinton hatchet man, was the moderator, quote unquote. You had an almost universally hostile audience that obviously selected for that reason. And you had it essentially in the format of a presidential debate, except without the presidential opponent, Joe Biden, because Joe Biden could never handle that sort of thing. And I have to tell you, I thought Trump did great. I will be the first to admit sometimes when I think his rhetoric is hurting him. He was just terrific. He went in prepared. He went in measured. He knew the medium. He knew that network TV was going to be a little different than cable TV or Twitter. He went in a likable and tough way. And he shot down what I thought were a lot of really bad premises from the left. I think even though the entire deck was stacked against him, it showed the guy is so agile, and I suspect after Democrats watch that performance, they are going to continue. They're going to ramp up their efforts and do their best to prevent Joe Biden from getting on a debate stage with Trump.
You know, it's interesting because we've been asking for Biden for months, and President Trump has been on the show 5 or 6 times already. They just will not cross over the border. I'm not saying we're right, but conservative. I'm clearly conservative, but here Trump goes in, as you point out, into a hostile environment. Now, I like Stephanopoulos. I know him personally, nice guy, but he did come from the Clinton campaign, and that audience was after Trump. So should he be doing those things?
You know, if he were a different candidate, I would say don't, play it safe. If Donald Trump were Joe Biden, I would say play it safe. But he's not. He's Donald Trump. You know, he is much better at this. He is a king of reality TV. That really came out last night. And he also vindicated a thesis that I think a lot of Trump supporters have been talking about, that Trump's critics have been dismissing, which is a lot of Trump's critics, the kind of consensus view was that in 2016, people voted for Trump because of his personality in spite of his policies. You know, they got a kick out of how funny he is, but his policies are really dumb and stupid and deplorable and all those sorts of things. And the reality is it's the opposite. There was a question last night where someone said, what do you say to people who say that you aren't presidential? And he said, look, sometimes I'm not presidential. Sometimes I talk a little loose and maybe you don't like me, but my policies are working. For goodness sakes, he's bringing peace to the Middle East.
Let's talk about that for a second. Presidents going back to, I'll say, Kennedy have tried to do this. President Trump does it, and he gets almost zero credit in the media. Almost just like they're pushing back on a Middle Eastern peace treaty between Israel, Bahrain, and the UAE. Unbelievable. The I don't know, what do you call it? Trump derangement syndrome?
I guess it would be Trump derangement syndrome. And don't forget, in addition, he had the Serbia-Kosovo treaty, which was separate from the Middle East. Then he had the Bahrain treaty. Then he had the UAE treaty. Now he's announcing possibly another 9 Middle East peace treaties. You know, we used to say as a sort of pipe dream, we'd say, oh yeah, so-and-so is going to bring peace to the Middle East. Now I think the pipe dream is going to be, yeah, so-and-so is going to bring peaceful protests to democratic cities, because that's where the real unrest is now. And it seems like that's not going to abate. But Trump isn't going to get credit for that. And it reminds me from a line from the Bible, which is that God uses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And everyone say Trump's an idiot, conservatives are idiots, Republicans are idiots, they're unscientific, they're inexpert. Well, look at the results. Yeah. Because for all of the PhDs and all the long list of letters and credentials, Trump is doing better, and the Republicans supporting him are doing better at solving these problems than any of the wise, brilliant geniuses that have come before them.
Mike, very quickly, about half a minute or so. In the show, I highlight some of Joe Biden's struggles with numbers and cogent thought. President Trump had an error. Let's be honest. He said herd mentality instead of herd immunity, and the left is just eating him up for it. Final thought.
Well, final thought here is this. Joe Biden, Andrew Cuomo, the worst governor on the entire COVID pandemic, they're touting science and their precise use of language, which they mess up too, by the way. Just look at the results. I wouldn't worry about these little words and the jargon that they say. Look at the results. Who's handled these things better? President Trump, governors like Ron DeSantis, they have handled this better. They've seen the big picture from the beginning. And all our scientific experts, not so much.
Michael Knowles, everybody. Great to have you back, Michael.
Good to see you, Eric.